What is up, everybody? We are back again for another free agency live chat. It's our fourth one of the week. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Make sure we're not dealing with any technical issues before I start spouting these takes off. Yeah, I know. I am having a good hair day. It's a good hair day. Feeling myself right now a little bit. Would you do these live streams after games? Maybe. I don't know. I haven't really decided what I'm going to do with these things yet. I'm going to let this thing percolate a little bit, let people get in. Make sure we got the full crew in here. All right, Juan says we hear you loud and clear. Good to know. All right, we got a lot to talk about today. Let's be real. This is a much more eventful day than the past 2 days. So what do you got? You guys want me to start by talking about Kyle Fuller? You want to go through the other stuff first, and then we can get into Kyle Fuller later? Peter says hi, Pop from England. What's up, Peter? All right, you guys want the Fuller stuff. All right. Well, here's the situation with Kyle Fuller. Really, really good player. Just got cut by the Bears. Kyle Fuller was an All-Pro in 2018. And we'll start off with the Chargers connection because that's what you guys care about. All-Pro in 2018. Okay? That year, Vic Fangio was the Bears' defensive coordinator. And on that staff was Brandon Staley, who is now obviously the Chargers head coach. Brandon Staley was the outside linebackers coach. So there's your connection. Now, Louis Riddick smartly put on Twitter about 30 minutes ago that it would be either the Broncos or the Chargers, assuming just speculating for where Kyle Fuller would end up. Now, Vic Fangio is the head coach in Denver, obviously, and Brandon Staley is the head coach with the Chargers. They're going to run very similar schemes. It's a lot of two high safeties. It's a lot of quarters coverage. It's really Vic Fangio's brainchild. It's his scheme. But that's where Kyle Fuller had the most success in 2018, was playing for Vic Fangio in that scheme. And that's why he would be linked to those two places. Now, both of these teams – oh, here we go. Hold on. We might get some breaking news in the live stream today. This is from Mike Garafolo. The Broncos are expected to make a strong push for cornerback Kyle Fuller once his release is official, sources say. Vic Fangio coached him with the Bears, while George Patton had a close look at him annually while with the Vikings. So, both of these teams are going to make a push for that would be my expectation, because that is where Kyle Fuller had his most success. Now, this is what I was going to say before I saw that news. The Broncos signed Ronald Darby to a 3-year deal. Let's look up what his cap situation is. Let's see if Over the Cap has it up yet. A 3-year, $30 million deal. So they gave out a $10 million AAV to Ronald Darby. And he's 27. He's going to be 27, and the contract runs until he's 29. The Chargers, meanwhile, gave out a contract to Michael Davis. That was $8.5 million AAV. But they also have Chris Harris on a pretty sizable contract. His cap hit is over $11 million for this year. So it goes back to what we've talked a lot about this week. Your allocation of resources to specific position groups. Kyle Fuller is a really good player, but the Chargers already have 2 cornerbacks on veteran contracts. Can you really give a third cornerback a veteran contract? Now, the other factor in this, obviously, is that Chris Harris, his contract is up after the season. So that comes off the books. So if you were to sign Kyle Fuller to an extended contract, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it ends up being, after next season, in the offseason of 2022, you can move on from Chris Harris, and then you have 2 cornerbacks in Kyle Fuller and Michael Davis, and you're in pretty good shape. Now, we've also talked about this part of the equation, right? The Chargers have Justin Herbert on a rookie deal. So you can do things with your cap sheet and with your roster that you couldn't do if you had a quarterback on a veteran contract. That is what the rookie cap hits allow you to do at the quarterback position. So it would be a very aggressive move to go get Kyle Fuller, right? But if it's somebody that Brandon Staley wants, the Chargers could financially do it. Now, what I have the Chargers at after the Jared Cook signing, we'll get into the Jared Cook signing in a second, but I was accidentally subtracting something from my total that I should have been adding. So that swung at about $3 million. So right now, with the Cook signing factored in, I have them at 15.739 million in cap space, spending space. That's factoring in rookie compensation and factoring in all the cap hits of the signings they've made. Now, the Jared Cook cap hit is a projection based on the reports that have been out there. I have that at $4.5 million. I'll have to wait to see what the official number is on that, but that's what it looks like it is. And then that's also factoring in $7 million for in-season moves, which is something that I know Tom Telesco does as a general manager. He likes to have some buffer space there for various things, right? You just want some breathing room in case something happens. God forbid you have another season where you have a ton of injuries and you got to go onto the street and sign somebody. All that counts against the cap during the regular season. In the offseason, it's only the top 51 players that counts against the cap, right? Once the regular season starts, then it's the whole roster. It's practice squad players. It's everybody. So you have to have cap space in case you need to go to the street and make a move to sign a guy. And remember, when a guy goes on IR, he still counts against the cap, right? Just because he's on IR doesn't mean he's not on the cap sheet anymore. He's still on the cap sheet. So now you have to take on that cap hit plus whoever you're signing off the street to replace him and add depth to the roster. What's going on with the Akiem Hicks? Hold on. Did someone just have him with Akiem Hicks? Everyone can hear me, right? Someone just told me on Twitter that I'm on mute. Let me know in the chat. You guys can still hear me, correct? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. All right, so that's where it stands with Kyle Fuller, right? The connection is there. It makes sense. The Chargers have the cap space to go get him if they want him, if they feel like that's something they need to do. You know, and so let's move on. And we can sort of talk about Kyle Fuller in the context of everything else that happened today. All right? I'm trying to find out what's going on with Akiem Hicks. Can someone let me know in the chat what's going on with Akiem Hicks? Because trying to check Twitter while also talking to you guys is a little bit challenging. All right, what do we got? He's looking for a trade. All right. Not sure the Chargers would go in that direction. I imagine he has a pretty big cap hit. Let's see. Yeah, 2021. His base salary is $10.4 million. That's pretty hefty. Good player, really good player, but that's pretty hefty. So, okay, here's why they can go make a move for Kyle Fuller if they want to, right? What was the main thing when we entered free agency? We were talking on Monday. The people that read me on The Athletic, follow me on Twitter. What have I been talking about all offseason? Okay, what do you have to do? You got to get 2 starters on the offensive line, all right? They go get the best center in football in Corey Linsley. They get a functional, legitimate starting guard in Matt Filer, right? All of a sudden, they've got that relatively solidified, right? They still need a left tackle, but the offensive line is in pretty good shape right now. They've got a little bit more work to do, but you got Bulaga on the right tackle. If he can find a way to stay healthy, that position solidified. If he gets injured, you have Filer, who's going to start at left guard and could kick out to right tackle if Bulaga got hurt. You have Linsley, who's going to raise all boats because he is an all-pro level player, and he's going to make the entire line better. And if you go out and you draft a tackle in the first round, okay, that's situated, right? They needed to re-sign Michael Davis because they cut Casey Hayward. They did that. They got him back on a pretty nice deal, $8.5 million per year. I thought, he could have gotten up to $10 million elsewhere. That's a pretty solid deal. So they got him back, right? Hunter Henry walks. They got to figure out what they're going to do at tight end. They bring in Jared Cook. That's a smart deal, in my opinion. Okay. Now, I know some of you guys wanted them to go in another direction, but that's a $4.5 million cap hit for a guy who's been a really good receiving tight end for a long, long time. A guy who, and I wrote about this today, he's a guy who understands the Saints system, a guy who had success in that system. Now, Joe Lombardi isn't going to take the Sean Payton Saints system and try and force it onto the Chargers. They're going to mold this thing with a lot of different offensive ideologies. They're going to take stuff from Sean McVay. They're going to take stuff from Kyle Shanahan. They got Shandy, the quarterback's coach from the 49ers. They're going to take stuff from Matt LaFleur, their new tight ends coach, all right, was on the Packers staff last year. So they're going to take bits and pieces from everywhere, but they are going to take stuff from the Sean Payton system, okay? It's a very complex system. One of the most complex, intricate systems in the NFL. Now you bring in a guy in Jared Cook who's very familiar with it, okay, and can help Joe Lombardi distill some of this information, right? Distill some of these concepts to a young quarterback. It makes sense in that regard, and he's also still a really productive player. Now, you're always worried about signing a 34-year-old, obviously, okay? You can't avoid that part of the conversation. However, it makes sense on a lot of different levels. Okay, now you have a veteran in here on a cheap one-year contract that you can move on from after next season. No issues, no problems. Boom. Okay, that's smart team building. Where you get yourself into trouble is when you sign players, you overpay for players, right? Now, personally, I would have thought about going to $12.5 million a year for Hunter Henry. I like him more than a lot of people do. You know, just talking to people, you know, maybe I overrate him a little bit. I just love him as a player. But if they went out and gave him $12.5 million with 66% of the contract guaranteed, now you've got yourself into a little bit of a hole if Hunter Henry doesn't live up to that contract. Now, and we've talked all week about aligning your contract value with the value the player provides in the field. Now you get yourself into an issue, right? If you have him on a 4-year deal at $50 million with, 30-something million of it guaranteed, there aren't a lot of outs you're going to have in that contract, and now you're saddled with a guy who does have an injury history, right, and might not be living up to that contract. With Jared Cook, you pay him for 1 year, $4.5 million cap hit. He brings all of those things that I was talking about before in terms of helping Joe Lombardi implement his new offense with the Chargers. And if it's a complete and utter disaster and he's injured the whole year and he looks like a 34-year-old, you move on, no problem, next offseason. Those are smart decisions, right? Instead of overpaying for a guy, you're finding an alternative who's going to be close to that player at a discounted price. That's smart, okay? Now, are they done looking for tight ends? Absolutely not. And listen, if you want more detail on all of this, I'm going to stop right here, okay? If you want more detail on all of this, I wrote a whole article about the Jared Cook signing already, okay? In the description below this video, there is a link. You'll see it. I wrote it in all caps. Subscribe to The Athletic for $1 a month, $12 for the whole year. Click the link below. Everything you want to know about the Jared Cook signing is in there. The people that subscribe to The Athletic have probably already read that article, and they can tell you that there's tons of great information in there. Link below the video. $1 a month. $1 a month. I'm telling you right now, it is the best deal you're going to get. So if you want to read my content, you want to be a part of The Athletic, you want to read everybody on the site, the best sports writing in the world, in my opinion, now's your chance. $1 a month. Okay? Go do that. So, smart team building to go get Jared Cook, but they are not done with the tight end room. I'm telling you that right now. Jared Cook is not a good enough blocker. Donald Parham is not a good enough blocker. So you got receivers there. You got intriguing receiving options in the tight end room, but you need a blocker. So what do? Here's what you do. Tommy Tremble, Notre Dame tight end. Now, Tom Telesco loves that program. He loves Brian Kelly. He loves the leaders and the high character guys that program produces. Every year, pretty much, he drafts a Notre Dame guy. Tommy Tremble is a guy who is a ready-made NFL blocker. Go watch his film. He is ready to block at this level. He's not quite there as a receiver, but you don't need him to be that in year one. So you draft him in the 3rd round. You pair him with Jared Cook. You got Donald Parham, and your tight end room is looking pretty solid. You got a blocking component. You got a receiving component. That's what the Saints did with Jared Cook last 2 years when they had Josh Hill there. Josh Hill is a plus blocker, can't really do a whole lot in the receiving game, but you complement those two of them, and it works out for the Saints in terms of their tight ends. So that's what we're looking at with the tight end room. But because you don't overpay for Hunter Henry, you don't have a very big cap hit from your tight end, and they're saving money here, and that's why you have $15 million roughly in spending space to go potentially sign a guy like Kyle Fuller. Now, what is Kyle Fuller going to cost? Probably looking at, minimum $10 million in average annual value. You're probably looking at closer to what the contract that William Jackson signed with the Washington football team, which was closer to $14 million in average annual value. Shaquille Griffin ended up at about 13 and change in average annual value, but that's what you're talking about. But again, and we've talked about this all week, guys, Ed McGuire is the Chargers' vice president of player finance. Okay, he does an outstanding job of structuring these contracts. You lower that base salary in year one, okay? You get a low year one cap hit, and that's what we're talking about. When we say they have $15 million in spending space, what's going to be subtracted from that total is the year one cap hit, okay? Now, everyone on here, I'm sure, saw earlier today that the NFL signed a $100 billion TV contract, okay? That's going to last the next 10 years. That is going to impact the cap moving forward. So you're going to get fans in stands next year, hopefully. It's looking that way. You got a new television contract that's over $100 billion. What does that mean? More revenue for the league. More revenue for the league means a higher cap. So it's going to jump back up next year pretty substantially. So if you can get guys and structure their contracts so they have low year one cap hits in 2021 and defer some of that money to later years, you're going to have some success there. You're going to have some space and some room to work with because you can take on more money in future seasons when the cap is higher, right? So that's where we're at. That's what they would have to do with a potential Kyle Fuller contract. All right. Those are the two big topics for the day. I know I haven't gotten to your questions yet. We're already 17 minutes in. But I'm going to do a couple more things, and then we'll get to your questions, I promise. So Dan Feeney's gone. Dan